The vast emptiness of space around New Terra looked peaceful in the early morning hours. 3 small moons cast pale light across the mining colony that housed 50,000 humans who had made this place their home. They had come here seeking a new life among the asteroid fields rich with rare metals that Earth desperately needed. What they found instead was trouble from beings they had never expected to meet. Admiral Kexithera stood tall on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, her crystalline skin catching the soft blue glow of the ship's control panels. The Zephyrian leader had fought many battles across the galaxy over her long career. She had seen species rise and fall under the might of her empire's military power. Today would be no different from the countless other times she had faced primitive worlds that refused to understand their place in the galactic order. 200 Zephyrian warships hung in perfect formation around the human colony. Each vessel gleamed like polished glass, their elegant curves and smooth surfaces reflecting the beauty that the Zephyrians believed should exist in all things, even in tools of war. These ships had conquered dozens of worlds over 3 centuries of expansion. Their crews were trained in the finest military academies in known space. Their weapons could turn entire moons into dust with surgical precision. Commander Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold viewport of the human defense station that orbited high above New Terra. The alien fleet looked like a swarm of deadly insects surrounding their small home. Jake had served in Earth's military for 15 years before volunteering for this assignment. He knew what real war looked like, but he also knew that most of the galaxy had no idea what humans were truly capable of when pushed into a corner. The defense station hummed quietly around him as technicians ran final checks on systems that the aliens would never expect to see. Hidden weapon batteries charged their capacitors while communication arrays sent coded messages deeper into space. Jake smiled grimly as he watched the alien ships maintain their perfect formations. They had no idea what was coming. Captain Lisa Hayes walked the narrow corridors of the UHS Defiance, checking on her crew as they prepared for what everyone knew would be their final battle. The aging cruiser was the largest ship in the human defense force, supported by only 12 smaller frigates against an enemy that outnumbered them nearly 20 to 1. The smart move would be to surrender immediately and hope for mercy from their alien conquerors. Lisa had never been accused of being smart. She had been accused of being stubborn, reckless, and completely unwilling to back down from a fight even when the odds were impossible. These qualities had made her unpopular with some of Earth's military leadership. But they had also made her the perfect choice to command the forces defending humanity's first colony world. The Zephyrian communication came through on all frequencies at exactly noon local time. Admiral Kexthera's voice carried the tone of someone who had delivered such ultimatums many times before. The humans had 1 hour to surrender their mining rights to the asteroid fields and accept relocation to a reservation world where they would be properly supervised by their betters in galactic civilization. Jake Morrison listened to the ultimatum with growing anger. The aliens spoke about humans like they were children who needed guidance from more advanced species. They had made this mistake from the moment of first contact 3 years ago, treating Earth's representatives with condescending patience while explaining how primitive human technology and culture appeared to more sophisticated beings. What the aliens did not know was that humanity had spent those 3 years preparing for exactly this moment. Earth's governments had worked together in secret, pooling resources and knowledge to build something that the galaxy had never seen before. They had studied every piece of information they could gather about alien military tactics, technology, and psychology. Most importantly, they had kept their true capabilities hidden while the aliens grew comfortable in their assumptions about human weakness. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge of the Defiance and opened a communication channel to the alien flagship. Her response was polite and respectful, exactly what galactic protocol demanded. She thanked Admiral Kexithera for the generous offer of relocation, but explained that the humans preferred to remain on New Terra and continue their peaceful mining operations. She suggested that perhaps there was room in the vast asteroid fields for both species to coexist without conflict. Admiral Kexithera felt a flash of irritation at the humans' stubborn refusal to accept reality. This was how it always went with primitive species. They needed to be shown the consequences of defying their betters before they would accept the wisdom of surrender. She gave the order for her fighters to launch and disable the human ships with minimal casualties. The brief demonstration of superior firepower would convince them to be reasonable. 100 Zephyrian fighters launched from their carrier ships in perfect synchronization. Each pilot had trained for decades to achieve the precise coordination that made their formation so beautiful to observe and so deadly in combat. They moved through space like dancers, their movements choreographed to maximize the psychological impact on their enemies while delivering just enough force to achieve surrender without unnecessary destruction. Jake Morrison watched the alien fighters approach and activated the emergency beacon that would transmit a single coded message back toward Earth. The message was simple. The children are playing with matches. Those 6 words would authorize the release of humanity's true military strength and change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The first wave of alien fighters came within weapons range of the human defense force just as the sun set over New Terra's main continent. Admiral Kexathara expected to see the humans request negotiations within minutes of the initial attack. Instead, she watched in shock as the human ships opened fire with weapons that defied everything she knew about galactic warfare. Tungsten projectiles accelerated to impossible speeds tore through the delicate alien fighters like they were made of paper. The elegant formations dissolved into chaos as pilots tried to understand why their shields offered no protection against these primitive kinetic weapons. Explosions bloomed across the battlefield as the humans fought with a savagery that violated every civilized rule of engagement. Captain Hayes smiled as she watched the alien fighters scatter in confusion. The real war was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn why nothing else had survived on the death world called Earth. The battle began exactly as Admiral Kexathara had planned, with her fighters moving in perfect formation toward the small human fleet. Each Zephyrian pilot followed centuries of established military doctrine, maintaining precise spacing while their weapons charged for the coordinated strike that would disable the enemy ships with minimal casualties. This was how civilized warfare was conducted throughout the galaxy, with elegant precision and respect for life. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Cooper sat strapped into the cockpit of his modified interceptor, watching the alien fighters approach through his targeting display. The human pilot had flown combat missions over 3 different continents on Earth, fighting enemies who understood that war meant kill or be killed. He had never faced aliens before, but he could see immediately that these beings had no idea what real combat looked like. The Zephyrian fighters opened fire first, sending streams of blue plasma energy toward the human ships. Their weapons were designed to overload enemy shields and disable critical systems, without causing permanent damage. The alien pilots expected to see the humans request immediate ceasefire once they realized the hopelessness of their situation. Instead, the human ships responded with weapons that the Zephyrians had never encountered in 3 centuries of galactic warfare. Tungsten slugs accelerated by magnetic fields to significant fractions of light speed, smashed through the alien formations like invisible hammers. The delicate Zephyrian fighters, built for speed and elegance rather than survival, came apart under impacts that their designers had never imagined possible. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge of the Defiance and watched the tactical display show alien contacts disappearing one by one. The humans had spent 3 years studying captured alien technology and learning about their military tactics. What they discovered was that galactic civilization had forgotten how to fight real wars. These beings treated combat like a formal dance, where everyone followed the same rules and nobody was supposed to die. Ryan Cooper pushed his interceptor into a diving attack that should have killed him from the acceleration forces involved. Human pilots trained in gravity wells where a single mistake meant death, learning to push their bodies and machines far beyond what most species considered survivable. The alien pilot he targeted tried to maintain formation protocol even as Cooper's ship screamed toward him at impossible speed. The collision between the human interceptor and Zephyrian fighter created a brief new star in the darkness of space. Cooper ejected at the last second, his survival pod tumbling away from the explosion while his target disintegrated completely. The other alien pilots watched in horror as the human pilot sacrificed his own ship just to destroy one enemy. Fighter Admiral Kexathara felt her confidence beginning to crack as reports flooded in from the battle zone. Her pilots were trained to fight opponents who valued their own lives and followed predictable tactical patterns. The humans seemed to have no regard for their own survival and fought with a brutality that defied all civilized understanding of warfare. The human frigate Liberty took severe damage from a concentrated alien attack. Its hull breached in multiple places and life support failing throughout most of the ship. Instead of requesting evacuation assistance as Galactic Protocol demanded, Captain Bobby Wright ordered his crew to ram the nearest Zephyrian destroyer. The aging human vessel accelerated directly toward the alien ship, its remaining weapons firing continuously until the moment of impact. The explosion vaporized both ships instantly, sending shockwaves through the alien formation. The Zephyrian pilots had never seen anything like this deliberate sacrifice of an entire crew just to destroy one enemy vessel. Their military training had no protocols for dealing with opponents who would rather die than surrender. Jake Morrison coordinated the human defense from his command station, watching as his outnumbered forces slowly took apart the alien attack formations. The humans were losing ships and pilots, but they were making every loss count by taking multiple enemies with them. This was warfare as Earth understood it, where victory belonged to whoever was willing to pay the highest price. The second wave of Zephyrian fighters launched from their carriers, but their pilots were already shaken by reports from the first wave. These aliens had never faced an enemy that fought to the death, rather than seeking honorable surrender when the odds became impossible. They approached the human ships with growing uncertainty about their assumed superiority. Lieutenant Sarah Kelly piloted her damaged fighter in a spiral pattern that no sane pilot would attempt near a gravity well. Her ship's controls were barely responding, and her life support was failing. But she used her fighter's death spiral to line up a perfect shot on an alien command vessel. The tungsten slug from her final attack punched through the alien ship's bridge, killing its crew instantly. Admiral Kexathera realized that her carefully planned operation was turning into a massacre, not because the humans were winning in any conventional sense, but because they were making every exchange of fire cost more than her forces could afford. The Zephyrian military was built around the assumption that enemies would surrender when faced with overwhelming odds, not fight harder. The human defense force was being destroyed piece by piece, but they were taking the alien attack formations with them. Captain Hayes knew that her small fleet could not win this battle through conventional means. The plan had never been to defeat the Zephyrian fleet with 12 frigates and one aging cruiser. The plan was to buy time and show the galaxy what humans were willing to do when their families were threatened. The coded transmission that Jake Morrison had sent hours earlier was already racing through space toward Earth at faster than light speeds. The message would reach Sol System within days, triggering protocols that had been prepared in secret since first contact with galactic civilization. The aliens thought they were fighting a small colonial defense force. They had no idea that they had just declared war on a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing. Ryan Cooper floated in his survival pod and watched the battle continue to rage around him. His emergency beacon would guide rescue ships to his location if any human vessels survived the engagement. If not, he would drift in space until his air ran out. Another casualty of humanity's first real war against alien enemies. The Zephyrian fleet was learning a hard lesson about the difference between civilized warfare and total war. They had come expecting a brief demonstration of superior firepower, followed by negotiations and surrender. Instead, they found themselves fighting beings who treated every battle like it might be their last, because on Earth it often was. 3 days had passed since the first shots were fired around New Terra, and Admiral Kexathera was beginning to understand that she had made a terrible mistake. Her fleet of 200 ships had been reduced to 140 operational vessels by an enemy force that should have been crushed within hours. The humans fought like nothing she had ever encountered in 3 centuries of military service, treating every engagement as if the survival of their entire species depended on the outcome. The remaining human defenders were down to 3 damaged frigates and the badly wounded cruiser Defiance, but they continued to fight with the same desperate fury that had shocked the Zephyrian forces from the beginning. Captain Hayes coordinated her tiny fleet from a bridge filled with smoke and sparking control panels, refusing every offer of surrender that the increasingly frustrated alien commander sent her. Jake Morrison had been monitoring long-range sensors from his damaged command station when the readings began to show, something that made his heart race with hope. The subspace distortions were subtle at first, barely detectable against the background radiation of the ongoing battle. Then they grew stronger and more numerous, indicating the approach of ships traveling at speeds that should have been impossible for human technology. The first hyperspace window opened like a tear in reality itself, disgorging a massive vessel that dwarfed anything the Zephyrians had ever built. The UHS Retribution emerged from the swirling energy portal with its weapons already charged and targeting systems locked onto the nearest alien ships. Behind it came another ship, then another, then dozens more as space, around New Terra, filled with human warships that had been built in secret over the past 3 years, Admiral. Nicole Parker stood on the bridge of the Retribution and surveyed the battlefield through the main view screen. The woman who commanded Earth's newly revealed defense fleet had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, knowing that humanity would eventually face enemies who saw them as primitive savages to be conquered or destroyed. What the aliens had not realized was that being underestimated was often humanity's greatest advantage. 800 human warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect battle formation, their hulls scarred and angular where the Zephyrian vessels were smooth and elegant. These ships had been designed by engineers who understood that space was hostile and enemies were deadly, built to survive damage that would cripple more delicate vessels. Every weapon system had been tested in the asteroid fields around Earth, every defensive measure proven against the worst that human imagination could devise. Colonel Steve Martinez led the first wave of assault ships toward the scattered Zephyrian formations. His vessel looked more like a flying fortress than a starship, its thick armor plating studded with weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. The human military had studied every engagement ever recorded between galactic species and concluded that most aliens had forgotten that the purpose of war was to destroy your enemies completely, Admiral. Kexithera watched her tactical displays fill with hostile contacts and felt a cold fear settle in her crystalline chest. This was not the primitive colonial fleet she had expected to face. These ships radiated the kind of deadly purpose that came only from beings who had spent millennia learning to kill each other with increasing efficiency. She opened a communication channel to the human flagship, hoping to negotiate before this situation spiraled completely out of control. The response came from Admiral Parker herself, her voice carrying the flat tone of someone who had already made peace with what she was about to do. The human commander explained that the Zephyrian fleet had exactly one opportunity to withdraw from human space immediately and never return. Any ship that remained in the system after her 60-second countdown ended would be destroyed, without further warning. Some of the younger Zephyrian ship commanders wanted to accept the human ultimatum and retreat to fight another day. Admiral Kexithara knew that returning to the Galactic Council with news of defeat at the hands of primitive humans would mean the end of her career and possibly her life. She gave the order for her remaining ships to attack, hoping that superior numbers would overcome whatever advantages these Deathworlders possessed. The battle that followed redefined warfare for every species in the galaxy. The human ships opened fire with weapons that turned space into a hellscape of nuclear explosions, kinetic projectiles, and directed energy beams that carved through alien hulls like they were made of soft metal. These were not the elegant plasma weapons favored by galactic civilization, but crude and brutal tools designed to kill enemies as quickly and efficiently as possible. Steve Martinez dove his assault ship through the heart of a Zephyrian formation, his guns firing continuously while missiles streaked away from his hull toward targets that his computers had already marked for destruction. The aliens tried to maintain their careful formations and coordinate their attacks according to established doctrine. But human tactics had been forged in wars where following predictable patterns meant death. The UHS Vengeance rammed a Zephyrian battlecruiser at full acceleration, its reinforced prow designed specifically for such attacks. The alien vessel crumpled around the impact point like paper, its elegant curves no match for a ship built by beings who understood that sometimes the only way to win was to accept mutual destruction. The human vessel survived the collision and continued fighting with half its hull missing. Admiral Kexithera sent emergency messages to every Zephyrian ship in her fleet, ordering them to scatter and retreat before they were all destroyed by these insane Deathworlders. Her own flagship took a direct hit from a human nuclear warhead, its crystalline structure cracking under stresses it was never designed to withstand. She managed to get a final transmission through to the Galactic Council before her ship's power systems failed completely. The message that reached the council chambers was simple but terrifying. The humans were not the primitive species that galactic intelligence had classified them as. They were Deathworlders who had evolved on a planet where everything tried to kill them, and they had spent their entire evolutionary history learning to be the most dangerous predators in any environment. The galaxy had awakened something terrible, and Admiral Kexthara feared that no force in known space would be able to stop them. Admiral Parker watched the last Zephyrian ships disappear into hyperspace and opened a communication channel to the surviving human defenders. Captain Hayes and her crew had held the line long enough for Earth's real military to arrive, proving that humanity would never surrender their colonies to alien conquest. The age of human expansion was about to begin. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of receiving Admiral Kexthara's final transmission from the battle at New Terra. Council Speaker Velteron of the Aquatic Collective floated in his environmental suit as he addressed the gathered representatives of 47 different species. The footage from the battle played on screens throughout the chamber, showing human warships tearing through Zephyrian formations with weapons that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. The Zephyrian delegate, Ambassador Thexara, stood before the council with her crystalline skin dulled by shock and fear. She had received reports that only 38 ships from Admiral Kexthara's fleet of 200 had managed to escape the human system alive. The rest had been destroyed by enemies who fought with a savagery that violated every principle of civilized conflict that galactic society had developed over thousands of years. Council Speaker Velteron authorized immediate access to Earth's historical databases, hoping to understand how such an apparently primitive species could possess military capabilities that surpassed the combined fleets of the major galactic powers. What the research teams discovered in those databases would change how every species in known space viewed the small blue world that humanity called home. Dr. Amanda Foster sat in the communication center aboard the UHS Retribution, preparing to address the Galactic Council via quantum link. The xenobiologist had been part of Earth's first contact team 3 years ago, carefully studying alien psychology and culture, while presenting humanity as a peaceful species, seeking guidance from their more advanced neighbors. Everything she had learned during those diplomatic missions was about to be put to use in a very different kind of negotiation. The historical records painted a picture of Earth that horrified the alien researchers. Humanity's homeworld was classified as a Class 12 death world, a planet where the environment itself was actively hostile to complex life. Most species evolved on worlds where cooperation was essential for survival, but humans had developed on a world where everything, from the weather to the local wildlife, was constantly trying to kill them. The database searches revealed that human history was an unbroken chain of warfare stretching back to their earliest civilizations. These beings had not just survived on their death world, they had thrived by becoming apex predators who spent thousands of years developing increasingly sophisticated ways to kill each other. Every human military tactic had been tested in real combat against equally desperate and intelligent opponents. Major Carlos Wright commanded the human ground forces that had landed on the Zephyrian colony world of Crystal Falls. During the battle at New Terra, the alien civilians had surrendered immediately after seeing footage of what happened to their military fleet. But Wright was more interested in studying their military installations than conquering their population. What he found confirmed everything that human intelligence had suspected about galactic military doctrine. The Zephyrian military bases were designed more like research facilities than combat installations. Their weapons were optimized for disabling enemy equipment rather than destroying it completely. Their tactics manuals emphasized minimizing casualties and achieving victory through superior technology rather than superior aggression. These aliens had been playing at war while humanity had been practicing for extinction-level conflicts. Dr. Foster began her address to the Galactic Council by explaining that humanity had deliberately concealed their true capabilities during first contact. Earth's governments had studied every piece of available information about galactic civilization and concluded that revealing their military strength too early would result in a preemptive attack from species who feared what Deathworlders might be capable of given time to develop. The council members listened in growing horror as Foster described how humans viewed warfare as total commitment to victory or death. She explained that human military doctrine was based on the assumption that enemies would use every available weapon and tactic to achieve victory, because that was how humans themselves fought when their survival was threatened. The concept of limiting warfare to avoid excessive casualties was completely alien to a species that had evolved by outcompeting every other predator on their world. Ambassador, Thexara asked the question that every council member was thinking, but none wanted to voice. If humans possess such devastating military capabilities, what did they want from galactic civilization? Foster's answer was surprisingly simple. Humanity wanted the same things that most species wanted: trade partners, new technologies, and peaceful coexistence with their neighbors. The difference was that humans were prepared to fight total wars to protect those things if necessary. The alien researchers continued digging through Earth's historical records, finding evidence of conflicts that had consumed entire continents and weapons that could sterilize whole planets. Human warfare had progressed from stone clubs to nuclear weapons in just a few thousand years, driven by competition between groups who understood that defeat meant extinction. Every human innovation in science and technology had been tested. First as a tool of war, Major Wright reported that the Zephyrian military personnel he had interviewed could not understand why humans were willing to sacrifice entire ships and crews to destroy single enemy targets. The aliens had been trained to view their equipment and personnel as valuable resources that should be preserved whenever possible. Humans viewed everything as expendable if it meant protecting their civilians and achieving victory over their enemies. The council debate continued for hours as representatives struggled to understand the implications of humanity's true nature. Some species called for immediate military action against Earth before the humans could expand further into galactic space. Others argued that making enemies of the Deathworlders would be the worst possible mistake that galactic civilization could make. Dr. Foster concluded her presentation by showing the council what Earth looked like from orbit. The beautiful blue and green world appeared peaceful and welcoming, nothing like the hellish death world that the databases described. She explained that this was exactly why humans had evolved to be so dangerous. On a world where everything beautiful could kill you, the survivors learned to be more deadly than anything else in their environment. The vote to formally recognize humanity's territorial claims and invite Earth to join the Galactic Council as a permanent member passed by a narrow margin. The species who voted against the measure did so not because they disagreed with human actions, but because they feared what might happen when the galaxy's newest apex predators decided they needed more space to expand their growing population. Council Speaker Veltoran privately admitted to his closest advisors that the galaxy needed humanity's protection more than humans needed galactic civilization. If threats existed in the unexplored regions of space that could challenge the established order, they would need Deathworlders to face them. The age of human expansion had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the battle at New Terra changed the balance of power in the galaxy, Captain Daniel Brooks commanded the UHS Vindicator as it patrolled through space that had once belonged entirely to the Zephyrian Empire. The alien territory had fractured into dozens of smaller factions after their military defeat, with some groups seeking alliance with humanity while others retreated to their core worlds to nurse their wounded pride and plan for an uncertain future. Patrol route took Brooks past 3 different star systems where human engineering teams were helping alien colonies rebuild their infrastructure, using technology that combined the best of both civilizations. The humans brought their practical knowledge of survival and defense, while the aliens contributed their understanding of energy manipulation and faster-than-light travel. The partnership was proving beneficial for both sides, even if it had begun with violence and misunderstanding. Ambassador Helen Clark sat in her office aboard the massive diplomatic station that orbited the former Zephyrian capital world, reviewing the territorial agreements that would reshape this entire sector of the galaxy. The human diplomat had spent months negotiating with alien leaders who still struggled to understand why humanity had not simply conquered their worlds after demonstrating such overwhelming military superiority. The answer was surprisingly simple. Though most alien species found it difficult to believe, humans preferred cooperation to conquest because managing unwilling subjects required resources that could be better spent on exploration, research, and defending against real threats. Earth's history was full of empires that had collapsed under the weight of trying to control too much territory with insufficient resources. Commander Nathan Price walked through the training facilities on the joint military base that had been established in neutral space between human and alien territories. The former Earth Marine was responsible for teaching alien crews the basics of human military doctrine, a task that proved more challenging than anyone had anticipated. The aliens struggled with concepts that human children learned from playground games and history lessons. The Zephyrian cadets in Price's latest training class could not understand why human tactics emphasized aggression and rapid decision-making over careful planning and coordinated group actions. They had evolved as a species that valued consensus and cooperation, making it difficult for them to adapt to military strategies that required individual initiative and the willingness to take calculated risks. Captain Brooks received a priority communication from Earth Command while his ship was investigating reports of pirate activity near the border between human and former Zephyrian space. The message contained intelligence about unknown vessels that had been detected in the Outer Rim territories, moving in formation patterns that suggested military organization rather than commercial or exploration purposes. The unknown ships had appeared suddenly in 3 different systems over the past month, conducting what appeared to be reconnaissance missions before disappearing back into the void between star systems. Their technology was unlike anything in the databases of known galactic species, and their behavior suggested they were studying both human and alien defensive capabilities for reasons that could not be peaceful. Ambassador Clark convened an emergency meeting of the Sector Defense Council, bringing together representatives from Earth and 6 different alien species to discuss the potential threat. The meeting took place in the council chamber that had been designed to accommodate the environmental needs of all member species, with sections for aquatic beings, high-gravity dwellers, and others whose biology required special considerations. The debate that followed revealed how much the political landscape had changed since humanity's arrival in galactic space. The alien representatives no longer questioned human military assessments or suggested diplomatic solutions to problems that clearly required defensive preparations. They had learned to trust human expertise in matters of war and survival, even when they did not fully understand the reasoning behind human recommendations. Commander Price received orders to accelerate the training program for alien military personnel, focusing on emergency response procedures and coordination between different species combat units. The mixed crews would need to work together effectively if the unknown threat proved to be as dangerous as human intelligence analysts suspected it might be. The first joint patrol mission launched 2 weeks later, with human and alien ships working together to investigate the outer rim systems where the unknown vessels had been detected. Captain Mary Johnson commanded the mixed squadron from her flagship UHS Guardian, with alien vessels integrated into the formation according to their individual capabilities and crew training levels. The patrol discovered evidence of systematic surveillance activities in multiple systems, including monitoring stations that had been placed to observe major shipping routes and communication networks. The technology was clearly advanced, but it followed design principles that were completely unfamiliar to both human and alien engineers who examined the recovered equipment. Admiral Parker stood in the command center of the Terran Defense Fleet headquarters, studying reports from patrol missions across human space and allied territories. The pattern that was emerging suggested that whoever was conducting these reconnaissance missions possessed military capabilities that could pose a serious threat to the established order in this part of the galaxy. The construction of the first joint defense station began in the neutral zone between human and alien space, designed to serve as both a symbol of cooperation and a practical command center for combined military operations. The station incorporated defensive technologies from multiple species, creating a facility that was stronger than anything any single civilization could have built alone. Captain Brooks watched the construction crews working on the defense station during his latest patrol, observing humans and aliens laboring side by side to build something that might be essential for their mutual survival. The partnership that had begun with violence and fear was evolving into something that could protect both species from threats that none of them could face alone. The galaxy had learned important lessons about the dangers of underestimating humanity, but humans had also learned valuable things about the benefits of cooperation with species that possessed different strengths and perspectives. The combination of human military doctrine with alien technology and wisdom was creating new possibilities for defense and exploration that neither side could have achieved independently. Council Speaker. Velteron concluded his latest report to the full Galactic Council by noting that the integration of humanity into galactic civilization had proceeded more smoothly than anyone had dared to hope. The Deathworlders had proven to be valuable allies who were willing to share their knowledge and protect their neighbors, even former enemies who had learned to respect their capabilities. The age of human expansion continued, but it was no longer a story of conquest and domination. Instead, it had become a tale of cooperation between species who had learned that survival in a dangerous galaxy required the combined strengths of all civilized beings working together against whatever threats the unknown regions of space might contain.